Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
He's here, kids. Dr. Robert A. Heineman, Alfred University political science professor emeritus.
Good morning, all. Yes.
Let's start out with the Newsmaker show that we had yesterday. It was Congressman Tom Reed's press call from the day before. It was a Wednesday press call from Wednesday afternoon where Reed was actually in Salamanca for it. He was on the line with the mayor of Salamanca and the fire chief from Salamanca. Pretty serious allegations there that somebody died of a heart attack because the fire department and city of Salamanca are not funded properly because they say the governor gave money to Niagara Falls that could have gone to Salamanca, and they say that, you know, Niagara Falls is a lot wealthier and more taxable than little Salamanca there. That's a pretty big accusation. I'm gonna have Democrat candidate for Congress Tracy Petrano on next week to get the Democrats' response to that. But hey, I want to hear what you thought about it, Dr. Bob.
Well, I don't know. I certainly agree that Niagara Falls has more resources, you would think, than Salamanca. I think that's probably true, although I don't think Niagara Falls is, frankly, all that prosperous either. It is one of the highest crime rates in the state. It's a dangerous city to live in. In fact, it may be the highest murder rate. I'm not sure.
I think Rochester.
No.
Rochester not anymore?
Oh, years ago. Yeah, Rochester was way up there. I'm not certain where it stands now, but in that respect, yeah, we could talk about so in any case, Mr. Reed is this involved with the claim that Governor Cuomo has not released?
Yes.
I see. So there's $10 million.
Apparently these are the Salamanca and Niagara Falls too are host communities for the Seneca Nation.
I see. And Niagara Falls got money, but
Salamanca did not.
And this is because the claim is
they're claiming it's because Cuomo is mad at that area because of the casino money that didn't come in to Albany.
From that area, because
yes.
Niagara Falls must have some, I'm sure they must have some casinos up there as well. I don't know. I think the lesson to be drawn from this is that Congressman Reed is increasingly making a bit of a name for himself in this respect, and increasingly making a name for himself as a critic of Governor Cuomo. And I continue to hear the rumor that he's being considered as a candidate for governor. So, yes, our congressman, Mr. Reed. And there are a number of factors involved here, I think. I'm not certain this would be a good idea on Mr. Reed's part, and I've had his staff people directly. In fact, at the Lincoln Day dinner here, I brought it up, and it was soundly denied by some of his staff people. But that was before Mr. Langworthy became state chairman.
Nick Langworthy from Buffalo there.
Yes. And Mr. Langworthy's wife is on Congressman Reed's staff as a part-time person. But you look at the situation that Langworthy faces, and of course, trying to retake control of the state Senate looks like, frankly, a pretty hopeless cause. So that I think his greatest hope is to get win a statewide office, and the office of governor would be the one he would be aiming for. Now, and if you look around, in terms of name recognition, I'm not certain that Congressman Reed is all that widely known, but has nonetheless gotten a lot of publicity in his work with the Problem Solvers Caucus. And obviously he's getting quite a bit of publicity here with his standing up against Cuomo on behalf of the Seneca and the people over in the Salamanca area. So you could, I guess you could make a case that for, in terms of Republicans and with name recognition and such, he would be one of the few out there these days who has some of the attributes that would make him a reasonable candidate for governor. But looking at this a little farther down the line, if Mr. Langworthy agrees with our assessment of the political picture, and that is that Cuomo will in fact be a candidate for president, then that drops down to the lieutenant governor, and that is Kathy Hochul, who is also a Western New Yorker from Erie County. And I don't know how that would play out, whether she would simply move into the governor's spot there, or we'd have to check the terms and such, in terms of the length of the terms. But it'd be possible that she'd be thinking that she would be the Democrat candidate. Again, I don't think that would happen, frankly. I think, again, in both the case of Reed and Hochul, the downstate population and money sources are pretty overwhelming in terms of statewide political control. But again, it's hard to tell. And so I think you may be hearing more and more from Mr. Reed and various other venues around the state and upstate. In the case of Governor Cuomo, I think there are a number of factors coming into play again here. And one of them is, of course, as President Trump's poll ratings continue to drop, I think Cuomo's got to be looking at that pretty carefully, thinking, the guy may, in fact, he may not be a viable candidate for re-election.
He being Trump.
Yes. And so the temptation has got to be growing and growing there, I think, on the part of Cuomo and his camp. How
would Cuomo run? Would he say, because he said things like, I am the left, and he said things like, we don't want these ultra-conservatives in New York State, so he reacts to who's in control of the state Senate. He reacts to who's running against him. He reacts to things like the AOC there. And in some ways, he's not terribly for her.
No, I think that's true.
So, I'm not saying he's a chameleon opportunistically, but depending on what the political climate is, he has made some changes. What do you think he would run as? Left, right, fiscal conservative, socially liberal? What would he do?
Well, I think he would run as a moderate Democrat, which is kind of what Biden is running as now. And I think he could pull that off, frankly. You look at the things he's done and the decisions he's made, a lot of them you don't agree with, but on the other hand, again, we've made this point before, his ability to act in situations is pretty clear. And the fact that he's certainly not off the table with some of these issues, so that playing around with legalizing marijuana, for example, he came up with kind of a halfway measure there in terms of lessening the penalties for possession of marijuana, the whole gun SAFE Act and things of that sort. I was talking to one of my friends the other night. One aspect of the SAFE Act, for example, is that you have to re-register your weapons or your firearms every 5 years. Now, there's no charge for that, but you've got to re-register those with the state troopers. And in Allegheny County, as my friend was pointing out, they listed something like 11,000 gun owners. And after the re-registration process, it turns out that there's 4,000 of them are either dead or gone. So that's only more like 8,000 or 9,000, and so it has had the advantage of really kind of bringing up to date how many gun owners and permit owners you have in the state. So that, there's been some advantages to it. It hasn't been a total disaster by any means. So there's a lot of measures he's taken where he can act like he's taking definitive action to deal with something that's got the liberals all worked up, but on the other hand doesn't trample the conservatives into the ground either. Now,
he does come across well in emergencies.
Yeah, and
all those situations, he's out riding a helicopter during the storms.
Yeah, well, in any case, I think, again, as I've said, I think he would be a candidate that looked pretty attractive to the Democrats as things continue. Now, yesterday, or I guess it was the day before the picture was taken, but it was yesterday, a picture of Joe Biden with his bleeding eye there. I mean, that's a pretty gruesome picture. Not that unusual, frankly, to have that happen. But he's had numerous pretty serious health issues of one sort or another, and this just makes it look worse. So I think there are a number of factors coming into play there that make Biden less and less the guy that the Democrats want to pick. But on the other hand, he's still ahead in the polls as the polls go, although the polls vary a little bit. Increasingly, I think you see Sanders and Warren, I think you're going to begin to see kind of attempt to coalesce their forces there, but we'll see how they interact with each other in the upcoming debate here, and whether they kind of defer to each other and spend their time attacking Biden, how that's going to play out. But nonetheless, Cuomo's standing aside. He's sort of standing above all this. And the point is, if he decides to go ahead and run for president, then obviously the field for running for governor opens up pretty wide. So those are some things I think we should be watching and keeping our listeners on their toes, Brian.
I think so.
I do want to make another point here.
Go ahead before I move on with the question.
Yes, don't rushing off there.
Go ahead.
Well, as you know, in the last few days, we've been getting a number of reports on what a workhorse Mayor de Blasio has been as mayor of New York City. I think the one report said past month he was in the mayor's office 7 hours, and I think, or was it 7 days? No, I think it was 7 hours. And the other, I think lately it was 11 days or 11 hours out of the month. I'm not sure, but the point is he's spending almost no time as mayor in New York City, which means, of course, that Dean Fullahan, the deputy mayor and an Alfred grad, is I guess running New York City for us.
Wow!
So we finally got somebody in there who knows how to run New York City and such. It's just kind of humorous, really.
Interesting point there, Doc. Afghanistan. Trump wants out, and he's not listening to John Bolton, I guess.
Well, it looks like they're pretty close to an agreement to put this to get the U.S. out of Afghanistan. Now, it doesn't look like it's going to be a massive withdrawal. I think we have a little over 14,000 troops in there now. And the figure I saw that we were going to start by pulling about 5,500 out. And part of the deal, I think, is going to be how conscientious or trustworthy the Taliban are in keeping up their end of the bargain. Now, if I'm the Taliban, I guess I would keep up my end of the bargain. I mean, what do we need all these American troops in here for? They can certainly be patient and take on the legitimate government once we get out of there. So, and at less cost to them in terms of casualties. So I think we are on the point of getting out of there. And if you consider that, that'll be, I think, an important thing for Mr. Trump. And if he can, and he's basically got us pulled out of the rest of the Middle East. So generally speaking, I think he's living up to his promise to get out of there. And if he moves in terms of the trade war with China and ends up with some sort of negotiations with China, which both sides can agree with. Again, yesterday the stock market shot way up simply on news that we're reopening negotiations with China. You can imagine what the stock market and the American economy would do if, in fact, we do reach some sort of agreement with the Chinese. Now, again, it varies quite a bit in terms of how bad is this hurting the Chinese. And some people tend to emphasize that it's hurting American industry. It's certainly hurting some aspects of American agriculture. But again, there was a report out of Breitbart here a few days ago pointing out that the tariffs are hurting the Chinese exports very badly. And it's the Chinese have to export to be able to keep their economy moving along. Their domestic market is not sufficient to keep the level of the economy going that they've had in the past. So suppressing the exports through tariffs has had a pretty disastrous effect on the Chinese, and it certainly would be to their advantage too to come up with some sort of agreement which would loosen that up. So there's an opening there, I think.
From Real Clear Politics, Dr. Bob, Trump quotes real estate billionaire Sam Zell about China trade war. Quote, U.S. has been subject to terrorism for 50 years.
Oh, yeah, well, the important thing is you got to get the right phrase in there, terrorism, racism, whatever it happens to be, you got to get it in there.
Well, that's what you say. In other words, the U.S. has been pushed around by the Chinese.
Yeah, no, that's the point. Trump and terrorism, I think, is pushing it way, way beyond.
Sure.
But, no, Trump's been making that point all along. He doesn't like to see the United States picked on. On the other hand, Trump, and he's going to stand out, there's no question about this, as really the first president who has taken the American economy and made it the kind of force in the international economy and international affairs generally that it has the capability of being. People have no idea how powerful the American economy is. I mean, it's just overwhelming. And Trump has given some of these kind of the EU as well as the Chinese a little taste of what that can be like.
Going to take a break talking with Dr. Robert Heineman, Alfred University political professor of political science emeritus. Stay with us.
Life doesn't stop for appendicitis, or a gallstone, or a hernia. That's why UR Medicine offers minimally invasive general surgery at hospitals throughout the region. Minimally invasive means smaller incisions, and smaller incisions often mean shorter hospital stays, less discomfort, and faster recoveries. So you can get back to the things you love, because life doesn't stop, and you shouldn't have to either. UR Medicine, medicine of the highest order.
Back with Dr. Robert Heineman. A number of Republican House members who are not seeking re-election. That seems to be increasing.
Yes, that's not a good sign at all, Brian. And what we need is a Karl Rove or somebody out there who, by the way, I think last week mentioned Governor Cuomo as the dark horse candidate for the Democrats. But be that as it may, they've got to have somebody like a Karl Rove or Lee Atwater or someone who can get out there and get some good candidates to fill these spots. I think that's what hurt him badly in 2016. The 2018, I guess. The 2018 election, because I think there were 33 or 34 open seats because Republicans had either retired or for other reasons decided not to run for Congress again, and that's tough. And now we've got quite a number withdrawing again this time around.
I'm on the Atlantic.com. This is an article that popped up Thursday afternoon. 13 GOP House members and 4 members of the U.S. Senate are foregoing re-election next year without declaring their candidacy for higher office. 3 Democrats in the House and 1 of the Senate are retiring outright.
Yeah. Well, so there's only 13 so far among the Republicans in the House. I would have thought there were more, but that's not good.
In the Senate, they're losing Lamar Alexander of Tennessee, Pat Roberts of Kansas, Johnny Isakson of Georgia, and Mike Enzi of Wyoming.
Yeah, well, those Republicans, I think, can hold on to those seats in the Senate. But the House seats, that gets tough. And so they're going to have to do some recruiting to get some good candidates and get some funding. Although the Republicans generally are not hurting for money, so that's a plus from their side. But again, you've not only got the ones retiring here from the House for the coming election, but you've still got those seats that they lost in 2018, and somehow they've got to regain some of those. So
from
it's
CNN, and this just popped up. Congressman Bill Flores announced yesterday he's going to retire from Congress at the end of his term, becoming the 5th Texas Republican to do so.
Yeah,
at the end of this election.
Yes, Texas has been getting hit very heavily with that. And again, increasingly people are saying, Texas could turn Democratic.
Now, Ted Cruz is safe for what, the next 5 years, 6 years?
Well,
5, I think.
Yeah, it's a 6-year term, and yes, I think he was reelected. Was he in 2018? I think.
Yeah.
Yes. So he's got 4 or 5 years. Yes.
Now, Beto's numbers aren't good in the presidential race. Do you see him becoming a Texas
power
broker?
Well, it'd be something he could look around at. Yeah. Some of these people may drift off into off the presidential campaign trail. People like Gillibrand and Beto.
Yeah, she's out.
Yeah, I know she's out, but, is she going to stay as a senator? Well,
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, not much else. Maybe she'll run for governor. I don't know.
Do you think she could win that?
No.
Really?
No.
Gillibrand versus Reed. Who's the other one you said? Kathy Hochul versus Reed. How would Kathy Hochul versus Reed work out?
Well, I don't know. That would be both from Western New York. Hochul's a very good campaigner. Woman, that'd be a tough campaign. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Bob, we had some controversial shows this week.
Oh, good. I hope we've been off on the edge here. Let controversy.
Well, I was thinking Austin Morgan and Congressman Tom Reed shows, actually.
Well, very good.
And because of that, we're going to have George Borrello on Monday to respond to Austin Morgan and Tracy Matrano on Thursday to respond to Congressman Tom Reed.
Wow, man, it's going to heat up next week, isn't it?
That also includes you, Ostrower, and Waddy in your usual slots.
That's quite a lineup, yeah. That's almost like being a week or so away from the election,
Join us next time.
Good luck.